It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Tuesday, October 8th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that's looking into what Danny Briere had to say about the opening roster, as well as our NHL season predictions.
Prediction time.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here as always with Russ Cohen, who's on all your favorite social media apps at Sportsology. We are at Locked On Flyers on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Twitter as well. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Subscribe or follow us over on YouTube. We're on the SiriusXM app as well, or anywhere you listen to podcasts. You'll get our latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We talked about the final roster on yesterday's show at length. It's not official until, of course, the end of the day, Monday, which Danny Briere and the Flyers did so. And as we talked about yesterday, Jett Luchanko becomes the youngest guy to make the Flyers opening roster in team history.
Yeah. Okay. We'll see how it works out. I'm not going to overdo anything because there's just, no reason to.
So in Danny Briere's press conference yesterday to discuss everything, he talked a lot about Jett Luchanko. Obviously, there were a lot of questions about it. And he said himself that he was genuinely surprised how well that Luchanko did in the preseason and in training camp, that he, exceeded expectations in his complete game that, and we talked about this yesterday, Russ, right? That he didn't score at all, really. So, was it the rest of his game that earned him the spot? And Briere seems to say yes.
Well, I mean, how long do you want to let a scorer not score, though? Like, that's really the question here. So that's what you have to go through.
We don't know because, the regular season is so different from the preseason that it's hard to tell what's going on there at all.
I mean, just look, Peter Laviolette rushed Sean Couturier. That one worked out. Paul Holmgren rushed Lucas Biza. That didn't work out. It's a coin flip when you do this.
Yeah, and he had pretty much said that on his own, which I thought was interesting as well, that he's like, there's examples on both sides of the coin here in terms of rushing guys versus not rushing guys, and that they're going to do what's best for Luchanko in the long run, regardless. From this point forward, no decisions have been made. If he plays less than 10 games, exactly the 9 games, if he stays, it's going to depend on how he does, how he's feeling, how he's, playing, and is he helping the team? And that it won't just be about points. It'll be about his complete game. And, I think the fact that Briere said, yeah, we don't know either. I mean, I feel like they at least are going to try and have some pragmatism here.
Did he talk about filling a spot that obviously was needed at center? Did he talk about filling a need, or did they stay away from that?
There was a separate tangential question, I believe, asked about the center position, where, they, I don't remember the exact wording of the answer, but I think he alluded to Jett filling some of those needs now, but that they're not going to depend on that for the whole season.
He won't. Doesn't mean the coach won't want to. That's where this is where the divide worries me, but that's fine. We'll see how he does.
Yeah, and I think that if it comes to a head where, Tortorella wants to keep him and Briere's like, I think what's best for him is not to, that's going to be an interesting crossroads for the team. But, that's like down the road a little bit. So beyond Jett Luchanko, he talked about some other guys as well as camp as a whole, and on Michkov, said that he also exceeded expectations at training camp, and Briere's observations were pretty detailed. I thought it was interesting that he noticed when Michkov had like proper rest, his skating was better. But regardless of the amount of rest he had, like his stick work, his control in traffic, his vision, all of that was top of his game, regardless of that. But he noticed kind of the difference between when he had skated hard or had a tough practice that morning or whatever and had to play that night.
I mean, I'm not sure that's really the difference. What I've seen out of Michkov is he gives so much on every shift that he's exhausted at the end of a shift. And I've seen that in every game in the preseason because now he's playing at a different level, right? Different than the KHL. That's what
Right.
I saw. They can keep referring back to this camp, but you got to remember he's not used to this. So I think I saw that more than what I think Danny saw. But either way, it's
I
fine. At least they recognize there's a difference.
Yep, I think that was the important part of it, that
Yes.
they'll figure out how to manage him based on some of this information that they've gathered, and I think that's really important. On Aleksei Kolosov, talked about that a little bit. Briere and some other player development guys went to the Phantoms preseason game on Saturday, so Briere got to see him play, and that nothing is set in stone, but they want him to stick around to know how he's doing, and that feel really strongly that he needs to be over here in order for them to evaluate him and his game. And I think it's good, and he's still with the team in Lehigh Valley for now, and I think that's how it should be.
Yeah, hopefully. We'll see. That's probably not set in stone like they said. So we'll see.
Yeah, and that they have, like, a lot more support around him now, with the goalie coaches there. They have language support, and even Abels apparently speaks Russian, so,
Okay.
he has a lot more support now, and the guys are like,
Then
you know,
last time. Yeah.
than last time. So, they kinda recognize that things were rushed, and they didn't really have everything they needed
Yeah.
together
They didn't have
last
the
year.
infrastructure. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that was good. He was asked about the power play, which was like, oh, that's
The
asking for
impossible
trouble.
question.
I
Yeah.
know, still hoping for improvement. Briere says he doesn't really expect them to go to top 10 in the league, but he felt strongly that even if the power play was the 22nd best in the league, they could have made the playoffs last year.
Yeah, but that was last year. Like everything
Yeah.
changes every year. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah, I
not
know.
everything's linear. So even if they are 22nd, it may not be good enough anyhow. Like, because you may be
I think he
deficient in
would
other
agree with
areas.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he would agree with that. I think he's just kinda in
Otherwise, our
that.
job would be easier.
Yeah,
It'd be so much easier to predict season to season, but the NHL is so hard.
I know. I think he understands that that's last
Yeah.
year, but he
Yeah.
knows that that was a huge factor.
Yes.
So, he mentioned specifically Danny Heatley, as being a good part of the advisory group on it, that
Uh-huh.
his perspective has been interesting. So, they're talking about it, remains to be seen what
Talk is cheap,
they have learned.
especially with the
Yeah.
power play. That's all I have to say. That's my quote.
Yeah, and I think perhaps, like, the most fascinating thing to come out of that press conference was that Danny Briere called out his veteran players, which is not something I would have expected him to do, like, in this setting at this time, but he did it. He said, "Everybody was great. They came into camp in perfect shape for the kinda camp that Torts runs. They did the bag skate really well. They've been practicing really hard, did not see the effort in the games, and that they were being too
Yeah,
lackadaisical
we didn't see
in
the
their
effort either.
gameplay."
So I think he was right to do that.
Yeah, the fact that he actually did it,
Yeah.
I think it's really good that he
Well,
did that.
obviously the coach is saying something to him, right? To the players. So I feel like he felt like it got it to the point where he had to say it out in public to get results. And that's not on
Maybe.
John. John's trying, but that's what I think, that's like another, you know, part of the job. Like, okay, if I need to goose these guys, this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah, so I thought that was, a really
Yeah.
interesting part of the press conference, and we'll see how the team reacts to that in terms of gameplay. He just, talked about how it's like much harder to go from, 0 to 60 than from 50 to 60. And he feels like they didn't get the energy up enough in those preseason games to be able to then turn it on a little bit more marginally for the regular season versus having to make a more significant leap in energy and effort and concentration. And I think that's a really good point.
No, that's a good point.
As far as, other miscellaneous stuff, he continues to hope that they learn from the end of last season to how to get over that hump and play in games with consequences. That's, again, this year, he just wants them to play in as many games with consequences as possible,
Sure, but
so
it
that
was
they're
more
not.
than that, though. Like, that was only a facet, a small part of it. That wasn't the whole reason this happened. So, in other words, he's letting the coach off the hook. That's what he's
I
doing. The
don't
coach caused a lot of this. He caused a lot of this by front loading Couturier, by saying, I have no choice but to play Ursa on all these games. And then he started to fold. That's not on the
Yeah, I'm just
players.
right, but I think that that's a separate issue from
Okay. Did
just.
he bring up John at all?
No, I think the issue here is that he wants the players to gain experience playing in
No, I
games
get
with
it.
consequences.
I get it. But did he bring up John at all in his performance at the end of last season?
No, but I think that this was a player-focused press conference.
But this is
That it was
anything
about the
focused. This is the
roster.
GM.
So,
It's about anything. He's the GM. If he's going to talk about the cap and everything, he could talk about his coach too. But he doesn't talk about his coach. That's the
well,
part that I'm getting at.
I mean, that's fair. I just don't think that was the intention of the question or the
No, maybe
response
not
to
that
it.
question. But I think
Yeah.
when you start doing that, that's part of those dots. It's not just hey, the players, they were kind of getting used to it and inexperienced. There were other factors.
Sure. I think that's absolutely fair. It's just like,
Yeah.
yeah, I just don't think that's the direction of the question or how it was
No, that's
supposed to have been
fine.
answered.
But I
So,
had to put it in at some point because I hear nothing about John. That's all.
separately about Ryan Johansson, he's off the salary cap until the Flyers hear otherwise, and it's in the lawyer's hands. If they lose the case, the money will be back on the cap, so he can't spend any more money that's left in the
Right.
cap right now,
Right.
which
We knew
which we
that.
also kind of knew. So, all right, so it was a big day for Danny Briere. Yesterday, we talked about our season predictions for the Flyers. Today, we're going to turn to the rest of the league and talk about our predictions in the NHL. We are going to do that coming up next.
Hey, NFL fans, you could start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, forget having to have dozens of tabs open. You can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. I've had a change of heart for this week's picks. I would take the Eagles over the Browns. The Browns are just dreadful. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com.
On tomorrow's show, we will be answering your mailbag questions. So get those in. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com. Send us a message on Twitter or comment on our YouTube channel. Looking around the rest of the league, I think obviously the biggest kind of predictor question out there is who is going to be in the Stanley Cup Final and who is going to win. Who you got, Russ?
I don't want to pick the winner yet because I get asked on a lot of different shows, but I will say who I think is going to be in it, and I'm going to go with the Avalanche versus the Devils. That's who I have.
Interesting. I just don't know that the Devils can make that leap all the way to the final. I think it's going to be the Oilers and the Rangers
Okay.
in this one. I just feel like this pattern of the runner-up team making it to the final
Right. No, I get
winning
the
the next
thinking
year.
on that one. Yeah.
So, and I feel like the Oilers did a pretty solid job this offseason of, maintaining what they have, continuing in that direction. So, and they have Connor McDavid and Draisaitl's all tied up in the longer contract and will have some more confidence this year. So that's why I'm going with the Oilers.
Yeah. I mean, they could be against the Avalanche in the Western Conference Final. Wouldn't
Mhm.
shock me. I picked the
Would
Avalanche
not
because
shock
of
me either.
what they did in the offseason. I felt like with limited funds,
Yeah.
they actually improved their team again.
Yeah.
And then
Agreed.
also with the Devils, we're starting to see the difference now with the games overseas with their new goaltending. We always said
Yep.
goaltending was their biggest issue. Now everybody's a year older on defense. They're going to be a dangerous team.
Yeah, I think so. As far as the kind of biggest riser from last season, I can guess based on who you just said would be in the final is going to be the answer there,
Yes.
right?
Yep. That's the answer. And it
The
really
New
has nothing to
Jersey
do with
Devils.
coaching. It has everything to
Yeah,
do with getting those goalies and having the defense be a year older. And of course, Jack Hughes staying healthy.
right. I think that's gonna and Hamilton too.
Yeah,
So
Hamilton doesn't have a great injury history like Hughes. So, but the years that Hughes has been, one of the best players in the league, they go to the playoffs and, they beat the Rangers the one year. So, I think they can go further than that.
yeah, I think so. I think if you're gonna have like a who's the second best riser, I think it's gonna be Nashville. I think what they've done has
Yeah,
been
they got Stamkos. Yeah.
yeah, they doing some really big moves. Like
Yeah, they
Trotz
did.
is on a mission, and so I feel like they're gonna have a pretty significant impact this season. The biggest faller from last season, I think, for me, you might have to go on the opposite end of that Stamkos situation and say the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Mm.
I think that, you know, Vasilevsky aside, I just don't know, like, that they have as much going for them as they have in the past, and missing Stamkos is gonna be like, not having him in the room is gonna have a significant impact on that team, in my opinion.
It's gonna hurt them. I don't think it's gonna hurt them enough, though. I still think they're gonna make the playoffs, but I get it. I mean, what you're saying is something that definitely could happen. I'm gonna go with the biggest faller being that's a toughie, but I'll go with the Carolina Hurricanes
Mm,
because I think now that's not to say they don't make the playoffs. That's just to say they're not going to be in first or second or maybe not even
right.
third. That they might struggle to get in. And I just think if they continue on this, hey, we're going to go with Freddie Anderson thing and lose a little offense every year. Svechnikov's hugely important to keeping him in the lineup. Like, their window is still wide open, but they have been less impressive each year for the past few years. And I didn't see anything in the offseason that tells me everything's better. Not yet.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. I think, my alternate answer is the Winnipeg Jets. There's no way they're getting 110 points again
That's fair.
this year. I think that, if you look percentage-wise, I still think they're gonna be a good team, like, to your
Yes.
point about Tampa, they're still gonna make the playoffs, but they're
Yeah.
not gonna make a run at the division like that, the way
No,
they
that's
did
fair. I like that pick.
this year, so that's my alternate on that front. I think the existential question that has been haunting many people for the last 5 years is, are the Red Wings gonna make the playoffs again?
I mean, I
And
got
I
hammered
feel
last year. Now, I said
yeah.
they'd be in last place and not make the playoffs. They weren't in last place, but they didn't make the playoffs. So are they going to make it this year? The answer is no. Why is the answer
I
no?
don't
Because
think so either.
I don't know if they're going to pick up a goalie at the deadline. If they do,
Mhm.
they can make it. And that's my caveat because with the goaltending the way it is, they're not making it.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think that's gonna be the linchpin. I think they're
Yeah.
gonna be close, and
Yes.
unless they can make the right moves at deadline, like you said, I don't know that they could do it, and that's, like, heartbreaking to say for Red Wings fans because 'cause it's been
Yeah,
a
I
rough
feel bad. I
road.
do. Yeah.
Yeah,
Not as bad as the
and
Sabres fans, but that's a
yeah,
whole other kettle of
yeah,
fish.
off to a rough start there,
And
in
injured already.
Buffalo.
Yeah.
And yes, yes. So, I know I almost brought them up as instead of the Red Wings, but, I went with the Red Wings because I felt bad
No, I get it. I get
on
it.
that front. And then who wins the Four Nations tournament?
I don't know. I'll say the US.
Ugh, okay, I was gonna say Sweden in an upset, But I really think Canada is going to win, but I'm hoping it's Sweden.
Okay,
I think that
that's
would
fair.
be
I like the U.S. goaltending that'll be there,
that's fair.
and I think that'll be a big key. Like as long as they're healthy, like this is right in the smack of the middle of the season, so if one of these highfalutin goalies gets hurt early in the thing, it could destroy my pick. But that's okay. I'm fine with it.
All right. Who's your top point getter this season?
Nathan McKinnon.
I still think it's Connor McDavid. I think he's
Okay.
just going to keep going because he's a machine. Your top rookie point getter.
Logan Stankoven.
I think that's a good pick. I think
He's already given
that's
us a
kinda-
preview, right? He had 8
I
points in the
know.
playoffs. So
Yeah. I think you may be right there. I hope Michkov is in second if Stankoven is
it'll be Michkov or Celebrini probably, but Celebrini's now
Yeah,
starting off with a little bit of an
I
injury,
know.
so that's a thing too.
Yeah. But I feel like if Michkov ends up in second in points for rookies, that'll be really solid no
Yeah,
matter
I
who's
mean,
in
look, a lot of
first.
great players don't win the Calder. It happens.
Yep. And the Vezina or top goalie this year?
Connor Hellebuck. They may not get 110 points, but I already like what I see. And I'll tell you, he said something to me a couple of years ago, and he said he expects to win the Vezina every year. And he really
Mhm.
does. He really, really does. He may not do it, but to me, he's a tremendous goalie. So I'm going with him.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Ottinger
Okay.
and see how that goes. I have a soft spot
In
for
a,
the
in a
Stars.
contract year, that's what his representation is hoping for.
Yep, exactly.
Because he'll get more in Swayman if he does that.
First coach fired.
First coach fired. Patrick Waugh.
Interesting. I think it's gonna be Sullivan because I think the Pens are
Okay.
gonna melt down. But maybe that's just
I'll give you my
manifestation.
reasoning. Like Sullivan, I think just because of everything he's done, they might just ride out the year anyhow.
That's fair.
That's the only reason I wouldn't pick Sullivan. I think it's a good pick. I'm picking Waugh because he's trying everything, and he has a temper, and he can burn himself out. And
Now, does he get fired or does he walk away?
Well, I don't know, but he might just, snap, and then Lou might have no choice but to fire him. Like, you know what I mean? And by snap, I just mean like, I've had enough. Like he sees where he's had enough because he's trying everything. He's talking to the fans. Like it's a hard job because he doesn't have a ton to work with offensively. He has everything else. So that's why I picked Patrick Waugh.
And then finally, does Ovi break the record this season?
No. 27, 28 goals. That's what I have for him.
Yeah, I think if he gets 35, that would be the high end of the ceiling for him this year.
Yeah. I feel like he's going to even have to do different training next year to break it next year because something feels off already with him, with how that season started for him, like just in camp.
Yeah, I also think that 5 to 7 of his goals this season will be empty netters.
No question. I mean, that's a given. They're going to feed him on empty netters. Like we know that. But like I'm watching, like an older quarterback in Aaron Rodgers, and he's already got like a knee that's blown up a little. He's still playing fine. But these are the kinds of things. How many nagging injuries will he have? That's what I worry about for the guy.
All right. Well, we'll see if any of these predictions come true over the course of the season. In the meantime, we're going to do a quick check-in with the Lehigh Valley Phantoms coming up next. We're driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. One of the things I love about Indeed is that it makes hiring all in one place easy because you can avoid a lot of busy work. It can be used for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from preferences. So the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Listeners of Locked On Flyers will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/locked on. Just go to Indeed.com/locked on right now. Support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on Locked On Flyers. That's Indeed.com/locked on. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Checking in with the Lehigh Valley Phantoms for our weekly Phantoms Tuesday segments. We talked a little bit about the Kolosov situation already, that he played that full game on Saturday. Briere mentioned that he played really well, that he he played really well. Each of the three remaining goalies at Phantoms camp got one of the three preseason games. So that's Kolosov, Peterson, and McAniemi. They sent Gahagan and Petruzzelli to Reading. So
One
that's
of them didn't
kinda
look good. Care to guess which one? Because I saw online already.
Well, two of the three preseason games, to be fair, did not look good. They lost 6-1 in the one last Tuesday to the Pens, and then they lost to the Pens again on Sunday 5-1. So that did not go well. The middle game was the one that Kolosov was in, and they won against Hershey 4-2. Now, obviously, the heavy hitters of Hershey were still up with the Caps, as was the situation with the Flyers and the Phantoms. So, you can't really look at these scores for indication, but you can, to some degree, look at individual performances here, right? Um,
Yeah, I
so
mean,
McAniemi started that first game. Peterson started the last game.
yeah, people were not happy with Peterson online. I didn't see
Mm-mm.
it, but I can see the score and have an idea. Uh, I will say this: I can see that they're fooling around with the lines. To be honest, and the pairings, the one on the right's a little better. So if I had to choose one, if you made me choose one, I would choose the one on the right. But I don't think
Yes,
any of them are exact yet.
no, and there were still a few guys who didn't start in any of the preseason games because they were
Yeah,
in the last group of guys that got cut from Flyers camp. So I wouldn't go by very many of these things, these lines that they had. I think that, the fact that Rizzo is playing at center so
yeah.
far is of note. I think that's important,
Well, he
in
is
terms of his.
strong. I mean, he's a talented guy, and if his offense is going to be at a certain capped level, he could give you more to the team as a center. It's possible.
Yeah, and I think that, Abel's playing the top line center in the last preseason game was an indicator there,
Yeah.
of where he'll probably be when
Yeah,
all
his
is said
last
and
game with the
done.
Flyers was pretty good. I mean, it
Yeah,
was. He didn't have a horrible camp. He just didn't make the team. But he's getting used to North America. I do think that's a smart move.
yeah, and then Jennings and Grans were the top pairing, in that last game. I like that. I think it's good for both of them in terms of ice time, in terms of, you know, pushing each other. I think that's a good thing as well.
Yeah, I mean, it could help Gronz immeasurably by getting just a little better partner and a little more, like I would say, consistent work. Uh, he was playing last year, but I didn't love who he was partnered with, and it seemed like once in a while they would skip him. Uh, it could really help him. I mean, if nothing else, they got to think about what they want to do with him because defensemen in this league are worth something, and if he could put up some numbers, somebody will take him in a trade.
Yeah, and, as a piece in a trade, sure.
Yeah, yeah,
I think, that's possible. You know, somebody who kinda stood out in the 2023 camps, was, Matt Brown,
hmm
and we hadn't really, heard much about him or
no,
talked about him at all, but he scored 2 goals in the preseason for the Phantoms, so that was good to see. Maybe his
he is a
name.
spark plug. He does have good speed. If he can stay healthy, maybe he'll be amongst those guys. But I got to see him play like 10, 15 games first.
Of
But that's
course.
but that's good for him. No, it's good.
Yeah, it was just good to see his name in the conversation
Yes.
again, I think, related to that. Zade Wisdom scored the only goal for the Phantoms on Tuesday. Good to see him get on the board.
Yeah.
He's a guy that needs confidence
He's
for
grinding, and I give
sure.
him credit for grinding.
Yeah. So, we'll see. where it goes from here. The Phantoms did send 9 guys total down to Reading to make
Mhm.
room for the 13 that came from the Flyers the other day. Samu Tuomala is still hurt. Cooper Marody is still hurt. So there's some question marks there, but the Phantoms have their first regular season game this Saturday at home, and it's the only game of the weekend, which is interesting. Starting off with just one game, and then they've got 2 games the following weekend. So when we return next week for our Phantoms Tuesday, we'll have one game to discuss, as well as what their final roster turned out to be. Any questions we have there? They have to finalize their rosters in the AHL this Thursday.
Okay. I'm going to just add that even at the age of 23, I'm still going to keep an eye on Mason Millman because now he is with the Bruins organization with Providence, and the Bruins have been known to, have defensemen sort of make it. We'll see what they can do with them.
Yeah, I would expect nothing less from you when it comes to
I mean,
Mason
because
Millman.
he's finally getting a real shot at the AHL, where he really didn't get a shot before.
Yep, that is true. All right, that will do it for today's show. We'll be back tomorrow. And as a reminder, we always want to hear from you. So send us in those mailbag questions on Twitter at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com or comment on our YouTube channel. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen today. For your next listen, find Locked On Fantasy Hockey, become a fantasy hockey expert, and get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from Steal and Flip. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Have a great day, everyone.